Well. King Critical, it has been getting a lot of King criticism lately for being a communist, right? Like, this is just something that should be pretty obvious, but yeah. Anyway, King, let's actually watch one of his videos lately. I'll show you what I mean, right? So this is a guy who his only claim to fame is that he like his only claim to fame at all, for those wondering, is that he was against he was against radical trans policies, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, grooming kids by into using life mind and body altering chemicals and cosmetic surgery while they're kids is bad, right? I think anyone with a functioning noggin can tell you that, right? And so this is like his whole thing. So his thing is like he debunks trans ideology, though, right? Which nobody cares about, right? Like nobody actually cares about trans ideology. They care about the fucking grooming. So like his videos on trans ideology are effectively just, well, people don't like the groomers in the movement, so they're going to watch and like his videos just because part of dunking on trans ideology is also dunking on the groomers. It's also dunking on, you know, not just the groomers, right? Like, so it's like that. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, most people only care about the trans stuff because a lot of trans people are groomers, and if you get rid of if the groomers were gotten rid of, the trans movement would literally go back to um being pretty much like where it was before, right? Like the trans movement only really became an issue because of all the grooming. And if it dialed back, right, if they were willing to dial it back, like the movement would actually, I'm just saying, the movement would actually gain a lot more popularity again, because most people outside of the third world don't really care, and we're deporting the third world, so it would basically just be people who, you know, don't care, right? Because again, most people don't actually care about this. Even like quote prominent TERFs like J.K. Rowling, um, have trans friends and they don't really care about it past the point of, hey, don't put men in women's bathrooms or men in women's sports, and don't do this with kids, right? Very simple things, right? Very simple like asks, right? She's not really transphobic, as it should be obvious by that point. Like, that is her response. But he's been in a bunch of uh, debates with, you know, uh, based if true, and it's pretty obvious that he doesn't understand that nobody really likes him anymore, and it's literally because he's a commie.
Hello, everyone. So, popular King Critical fan channel based based if true, recently, appropriately enough, made a compilation of my most based moments. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with, if you don't want to give money, I'm absolutely fine doing whatever. Any amount of violence is fine by me because it's legitimate to enforce positive moral obligations. I am against it, and I would also like to predate upon it. You know, if there was an anarcho-capitalist society next door, I would 100% say, yeah, let's go fucking take that shit.
Yeah, have you noticed that, like, he's still a lefty? His whole thing is, well, I don't like this, so I'm gonna just attack it.
Like, come on. Yo, KC fangirls, where the Lana Del Rey King Critical Nazbol edits at?
Well, here's my question, right? So you're against it. It does exist. You're saying that you would want to go attack it. Why aren't you attacking it? Like, why are you being a pussy? Why don't you get a gun and go start shooting people who are capitalists, right? Like, like this is the ultimate, like, debunk of this whole philosophy. Oh, I'm so base. If you're so base that you're gonna go shoot people, then go shoot people. Like nobody believes you because you're not doing it. You have ample opportunity. The enemies you are declaring are your enemies exist. So go fucking shoot people. Oh, you don't want to die. Well, pussy ass bitch who lost to Glass Joe. That's all I gotta say to that.
You're getting shown up by this dude. And what I really appreciate is not only did this guy put together some of my coolest moments, but he then went out of his way to
He doesn't look cool at all.
self-sacrificially provide a point of contrast by being as cringe as possible himself. I can't get over how much this guy makes me look like a complete Chad. Like, at one point he says I have the morals of a barbarian.
And his moral philosophy is literally that of a peasant, or more accurately, a barbarian, because, as you saw in the beginning, he literally said theft could be justified with any amount of violence as long as whatever he thinks the state is doing is morally correct. Maybe that's because despite you claiming to be a Christian, you're actually not that much different than an animal.
I'm an animal. He's literally like the stuffy.
How is this based? Like, he's literally calling you a retard, but okay.
Beta at the start of a punk music video before I, the barbarian animal, comes in and starts fucking shit up. Oh my goodness, this barbarian isn't respected.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna chip out, guys. I'm King Quick. Oh, I'm so bad. Yeah. That's King Critical for you.
The non-aggression principle. How ghastly. You'd think with a name like Based If True, he'd actually be, you know, based. Like, he would say based things. Instead, he's an anarcho-capitalist. Picture in your minds a cool guy, a Chad, an alpha male, the guy who gets all the babes. Everyone likes him, the coolest guy at school when you were growing up. Did you picture an autistic nerd who insists that everyone needs to follow these rules he's just made up, that he's in reality completely powerless to enforce
No.
because nobody listens to him? That's why anarcho-capitalists can't ever be based. Ever. It's a complete contradiction. As such, I'm not going to call this guy based.
Okay.
Because even though it's his username, it's not an accurate description. I guess since he's a libertarian, I'll just call him Lib. By the way, Lib actually challenged me to an MMA fight in his video.
I challenge you to an MMA fight, and I'll even set up the miniature octagon in my backyard.
I don't know why he would suggest this, because you can just tell from his voice that there's no way I don't have like a full 50 pounds on him. I don't know. I mean, maybe he does karate, because he does seem like the type to do karate.
You're going down at that karate tournament.
I don't think so.
You guys do karate? You're both losers.
But either way, this whole thing is irrelevant, because I wasn't saying I could take you in a physical man-to-man fight, Lib.
No. It's Muay Thai. Muay Thai. Art of 8 limbs. Spider boxing. Spider boxing. That's the best martial art.
I was saying I could take your stuff because
that's what it is. It's spider boxing. Art of 8 limbs is like you use elbows and knees, right? And part of like why that's so effective is it gives you like a large amount of wiggle room with what you can do. That and grapple. Like if you have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, you're basically set for most like scenarios.
Average normal person agrees with me and thinks you're completely insane. I've got the mob on my side. I'm not physically going to take your shit with force. I'm going to have the state do it for me. Remember, that's what this whole conversation was about. Lib gets very confused in his response to me. Do you
So what you're saying is you're a pussy who can't do things on your own. You want to pay nanny state to do it for you, right? That doesn't sound base. It sounds very cringe, actually. It makes you sound like someone who's pathetic and weak.
remember this moment from a previous response?
If I contractually agreed,
This is, by the way, why his country is getting invaded by Muslims who were destroying his entire nation from the ground up as we speak. Like, King Critical, your nation is going to die, and it's because of people like you that it's going to die.
to work on your land, or
Like you can say whatever you want. Those Muslims are on your front door. They're in London, all over.
in your factory in exchange for whatever currency or resource there is, why would I need a third party to come in and tell me, or them, that they can't do this? Like, this question makes no sense.
Sorry, that they can do this, right? We're talking about how capitalism requires the state. So the context here is that I said that capitalism requires the state. And Lib jumps in saying, well, hold on a minute. Why do we need a state to say that I can't voluntarily engage in wage labor for someone else? So as you can see, I sort of just give a little chuckle and correct Lib because I assume he just misspoke. But wow, if this is the case, he seems to consistently misspeak in the same way. So let's actually explore the possibility he's genuinely misunderstanding me and why that might be. I think the obvious answer would be that in his mind, the state opposes capitalism and interferes with it. So, because he's not capable of actually listening to what people are saying and just argues against ideas in his head, he completely ignores what I'm saying to argue against his conception of the state as something that opposes capitalism.
Oh, I just realized this is a Disney adult. That's Mickey Mouse. I love how he tries to say he's based with fucking Mickey Mouse on his shirt.
If this is Lib not just misspeaking, but being consistently unable to understand the words I'm very clearly saying,
Like, not even Kingdom Hearts Mickey Mouse, where he's like Yoda, just regular Mickey Mouse.
we'd expect this to be a consistent issue, and indeed, it is. See, in this clip, I explain why private property requires a state to protect it. Where you have a...
No, there's this thing called a gun, right? See, America was founded on this thing called the Second Amendment, right? And so anyone can defend their private property with this thing known as a gun. You would know this if you've ever actually been to America. But what happens with your country is someone goes up to you and stabs you, and then they trip over their own ass cheeks and break a leg. They can sue you for tripping because you had a banana peel on the ground that wasn't supposed to be there, right? In America, there are some states that we call libtard states that do that too. But then we have base states where what happens is shh, boom, right? And then the problem is solved. It costs 12 cents to solve that problem. You know, family's protected, bad guy is defeated. Glory to America.
handful of people controlling
No government required.
property that is being used by many more people, because capitalism is hierarchical. Just the kind of power.
Well, yeah, capitalism is hierarchical, so are all societies. Ultimately, there will always be people at the top and people at the bottom. Capitalism is hierarchical in a good way, in that there's multiple levels and you can change it, right? All other systems have what's known as a caste system. So in communism, what you have is the worker class, right, which is the poors, the people in breadlines that struggle to survive. You have the military class, which are much better off. Obviously, they want to keep their soldiers well fed. And then you have the political establishment. And these are the three classes in a communist society. They're not really good, but they are better than, I guess, a caste system or a feudalism system, but they're still bad, right? So, if compared to, say, monarchy, I'd say, you know what, it's better than that. But, you know how, like, shitty you have to be to go to a system that hasn't existed in decades to, like, or should I say centuries, to, like, have your cake and eat it too? Except you're Marie Antoinette, so they can't actually eat cake.
As it derives from the populace, is always going to be in contrast to capitalism. So you need some kind of entity that's going to have authority over the population that is not derived from the consent of the population in order to suppress the obvious resistance you're going to have to saying, hey, everyone, your wages are being cut again, says the guy halfway around the world who has got nothing, basically has never even...
Well, actually, here's the issue here. You don't understand this. The benefit of capitalism in this scenario is that if he's not over there, he actually can't enforce the wage cuts, right? You don't understand this, but there's no central currency, and also he lives all the way over here in East Jabumbafuck, right? And you live in Western Nowhereville, right? So, you're thousands of miles apart, right? So what happens is he says this, and then the people who are employing you can ignore him, right? And it doesn't matter what he says because the currency will probably be different in that area. Whatever he says remains like a very easily changeable thing, right? Because there's no enforcement agency to force this change, right? That's the beauty of it, right? Like, because he can't force that change, nobody has to listen to him unless he's actually at the company. What you're describing is actually private equity. But private equity can't exist in a pure capitalist state because you have to actually be able to physically be at the property to engage in pure capitalism. Private equity requires a state and a police force to enforce their bullshit. And private equity sucks. So I'm 100% for getting rid of the government that defends private equity. Like, honestly, I don't even care about getting rid of the government. I'm not a pure libertarian like Based of True either. I believe that certain things should absolutely be done by the government. I think we should have social safety nets and things like that. But when it comes to, like, police enforcing this, bullshit for private equity, yeah, that can just go straight to hell. It literally has done nothing but ruin industries. Every industry that private equity has touched has been ruined. And so in a pure capitalist society, that can't happen. There might be another ideology that bans private equity, and I'd support that too. But any ideology that allows for private equity, which communism does allow for in many aspects of what makes it wrong, right? Because private equity is that people who aren't at the company can own shares in the company and make the company the company has to abide by their decisions, right? That's the problem with private equity. And so communism is people who aren't at the company make these decisions, right? Right. It doesn't matter if it's a public entity or a private entity. It's still not at the company making decisions for the company.
Been to this factory before, but because he owns it, you will have to pay him with your surplus labor. And Lib responds to this by saying,
First, I'll start by...
Well, labor is... You don't pay him with your surplus labor. Like, he pays you with the ability to get paid for your labor. Because here's the thing, right? Labor inherently has no value. It only has, like, if you break rocks all day, right? And that's what you're doing is useless, right? You're not actually doing anything useful to society. That is putting in labor, but that's not creating value. That's not generating wealth. So an employer teaches you how to break things that make wealth, right? So instead of breaking rocks, you'll with other rocks, right? What you'll do is you'll mine gemstones, right? You'll have like a little knife that helps sharpen them up and cut them and make them in beautiful shapes that people actually enjoy, right? And so, this now your rock breaking is now worth millions, right? And so because he's taught you that, he wants a cut of that, right? And so what ends up happening is he might give you a commission for it, especially with a diamond mine, but so you get a small commission for the diamond mine, and then so like let's say you have $5,000 worth of diamonds, and your salary is 10 an hour, so you'll get a $20 hour boost for finding that many diamonds, right? Nice bonus, right? Is that a problem? Like, because you wouldn't be doing that if he didn't hire you. That's the point of him hiring you, right? Like, you want money. You don't want to put in the actual risk of investing into this operation that mines diamonds, and all you know how to do is break rocks, right? So, yeah. And again, there are other fields I could come up with just with breaking rocks, right? This is the only skill that we're given the person. Just to elaborate on that, right? So, like, that's kind of the thing.
Saying, so what if there is a large power imbalance? Are you implying that this is somehow coercion? Can people not leave their job at any point? Or build skills to find an even better job?
You absolute moron. I'm literally saying the exact opposite. The point I'm making, that I'm very clearly saying in the clip you're responding to, is that there is no coercion in this system. Anarcho-capitalism has no coercion, and for that reason, the state would be required in order to impose coercion, in order to defend.
So what you're saying is there is no coercion, but then there's coercion.
This power imbalance. You literally...
But the power imbalance isn't a problem.
Just ignored what I said and invented a completely different argument to get mad about. An argument that is in fact the exact opposite of what I was saying. My argument was...
Well, no, what he's saying is that your argument is retarded, so he's going to ignore it and talk about the next thing.
The state is necessary to defend capitalism because without a coercive mechanism, the power imbalances of anarcho-capitalism would inevitably lead to the workers rising up and overthrowing the capitalist system.
And why has this never happened before? Why is it always the aristocracy that wins in every single scenario? The aristocracy has literally never fallen. Look at any revolution. The peasant class was only ever doing the bidding for another aristocracy. Oh, let them eat cake. Yeah, it was written by an aristocrat to justify one aristocracy going after another aristocracy. The poor were feeding the hands of the rich fucks who fed them. It's just that simple.
You, for some reason, decided to respond to was the argument the state needs to overthrow or limit capitalism because the power imbalances of anarcho-capitalism are themselves a coercive mechanism. It's like the words entered your brain and kind of jumbled around a bit. You couldn't really work out what was being said, so you just invented a vague approximation of what you think an authoritarian collectivist might say. Now, I think the Fat Lib does this twice in as many videos, casts major doubt on his ability to respond to and understand arguments.
No, I just think that you are Subsomalian IQ and that there are a bunch of Muslims and Indians literally invading your country and you're doing nothing about it and you have no gun in which to defend yourself and it's getting worse and people are stabbing and raping people all throughout your country. And your problem is debating an American whose country is doing relatively just fine. We're actually getting rid of our Indians and Muslims that are stabbing and raping people. I know, shocker. And so we're doing just Andy. We're actually, the only problem we have left is beef prices, and Trump's temporarily importing beef from Argentina until that crisis is averted. So we're doing just fine, motherfucker.
But what if I told you he then does it twice more in this video? Listen to how he responds to this claim from me. I mean, the only scenario where anarcho-capitalism works is if this handful of people at the top get so much power that they're able to pretty much have everyone beneath them be illiterate.
Yeah, I see socialists say this all the time, that it's not profitable to be literate, but I actually have no clue what they mean by this. This claim is just entirely backwards because literacy is profitable due to the fact that you're expanding your range of productive tasks that you can perform. Like, just look at how much money lawyers make and ask them if literacy got them anywhere.
You might hear many socialists say that. You didn't hear me say it though. Bear in mind, this is an extension of the point I just elucidated earlier about the power imbalances of capitalism. The point I was making was that you would need to keep the working class uneducated so they wouldn't be able to theorize and come up.
But the working class being uneducated doesn't make sense anymore with AI.
With ideas like socialism, or else you're going to get socialist uprising. And that claim of mine...
No, the working class, you just need to give them opportunities to no longer be the working class. This is literally a thing that was happening under Trump and Biden, right? If you actually look at the amount of millionaires before 2018, right? So millionaires 20, we'll do 2016, right? So percent. Right, population, millionaires. So it was 7.2% back then, right, when Trump was elected, and now we'll do 2026, 10 years later. You'll notice a rise in that number, right? A little bit higher. Right, so... Right, so we're no longer using this particular standard, by the way. The reason why is because I believe this standard, so this standard is like, do you have $1 million in net worth? This standard, I believe, includes things that are like government benefits or some bullshit, or tax breaks or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's like a dumb fucking standard. It's like it includes shit that isn't your net worth. Like you're not worth $1 million, but you could be worth $1 million one day. It's like, it's so stupid.
Entered Lib's brain, and like I say, the words kind of bumped around, the rusty cogs started turning.
But yeah, we've had about a 10% increase in the amount of millionaires from,
knocking off the cobwebs, and the argument he decided to invent, me having said, was literacy isn't profitable. You think that a literate working class will lead to socialist revolution if there is no state to suppress socialist uprisings, but little did you know that being literate is a useful skill for a lawyer. I don't even feel the need to say that the claim I was making was even accurate and a good point. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a really stupid point. We can't know, because however stupid the point was, Lib was too stupid to even understand it. By the way,
No, it's more you're retarded, so pretty much anything he says will immediately overthrow what you say because you have 0 functioning brain cells.
It's pretty obviously talking about menial, blue-collar, manual jobs. The fact that this guy's go-to counterexample was a lawyer is comical. But more...
By the way, with AI, this number is going to increase by a few margins. So the millionaires are, in a couple decades, are going to outweigh the poor, right? Because AI will allow everyone to be rich. And so the only poor people will basically just be junkies that throw their life away and stuff. When that happens, right, do you really think that, when Americans are all super wealthy and well off on average, that suddenly, that suddenly, this means that capitalism is bad?
More to the point, I don't deny that having a literate population is profitable. I would like to have 100% literacy. But I recognize that with an increase in literacy comes an increase in independent thought and people coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, and you're going to get those crazy ideas catching on with people and causing all sorts of...
Yeah, okay, so socialists will exist. Absolutely. Socialist exists right now. And we don't need the government to deal with them either, by the way. This is a thing to note, right? The government hasn't even done shit to Antifa anyway, despite what most people want, right, until very recently. And they haven't even been a problem, right? They would, they have been a problem, but they haven't been a massive problem. They haven't been effective at doing anything but getting people who are against them elected in office, right? The only time they won was Zohran Mamdani, when they weren't protesting and stuff for several months. And also he had to go against Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, a guy who... So Eric Adams, you might not recognize that much, but let me just do this clip. So, I recognize Eric Adams from this, right? This is a homeless woman set on fire while police did nothing. New York City. So this is Eric Adams, New York. This is who he was.
Right now in Brooklyn, a prayer vigil is being held tonight. Chris.
Who was killed. Community. On Sunday, a woman was sleeping on a stationary F train when someone approached her and lit her clothing on fire. Police say the suspect, 33-year-old Carlos Zepeta.
Yeah, and so you'll notice that's a police officer.
The victim as she burned.
He walks by
Zepeta
and does nothing. So this is nanny state in action.
According to ICE,
they wait until she's already dead to arrest the suspect, and they don't even try to help her.
Officials is a Guatemalan citizen who entered the country illegally. Though
Okay, that's another thing. Calling him a Guatemalan citizen who entered the country illegally, it makes it sound like he's a citizen who transferred from Guatemala, and then, oh, okay, he's actually a Guatemalan native, right? Like, yes, he's a citizen of Guatemala, but we don't need to know that his citizenship status in another country. But yeah, anyway, that was who he was against, and Andrew Cuomo is a sex offender who shouldn't even have been on the registry. Well, he should have been on the sex offender registry, but not on the voter registry, right? People shouldn't have been able to vote for a sex offender. This is how it is. So Zohran Mamdani was competing with an incompetent buffoon who had been all in the news that earlier that year for his incompetent buffoonery, and he barely won against a sex offender and an incompetent buffoon. I agree that, a lot of people, that he's worse than the other options probably were. But I also disagree that, this was like cheat, because there are people who think he cheated. I absolutely do not think he cheated at all. I think 100% that this was an organic election, and the results were people were just that pissed off with Eric Adams, and people didn't like Andrew Cuomo.
Of insurrections, and that's why I support a state to keep that stuff under control. I'm not saying that you have to agree with me that for that reason the state is necessary. Maybe you can come up with some other way of keeping such insurrections under control. You don't have to agree with me, but for the sake of your credibility, you do at least have to have understood the point I was making. And then, just a short while afterwards, he says this: 1 million people being charged to use something that's allegedly just owned by one person, and they're just going to keep doing it. They're not at any point going to realize, oh wait, there's 1 million of us already inhabiting this property. What do you think is going to happen? Like, that's why you need the state, basically.
What are you talking about, right? So what that implies is that the guy has every reasonable intention to just treat everyone in that property with dignity and respect, because he would be overthrown, right? So his that incentivizes him to treat his employees well, which is literally why capitalism got rid of slavery. The introduction of capitalism to the West, including Britain and as well as the United States, was literally what caused Europe and the United States to get rid of fucking slavery. It turns out when you are incentivized to treat your workers with compassion, slavery is just a bad system economically. Turns out when you have rights and they don't, right? What happens is the power imbalance creates this thing where they're like, well, I want rights too. And so what they do is they go stabby, right? And, you die, right? If you don't treat your workers well. And so with slavery, the entire point is you don't treat them well. So basically that ended up going away, right? Because it turns out, like, when you have every incentive to treat your workers well to avoid uprising, treating them like shit tends to cause an uprising. And so slavery constantly led to uprising. So you're right, that will happen. And that's fine, that's the point. The entire point is that it incentivizes people to not be pieces of shit to each other. It incentivizes the top to treat the bottom a lot better. It actually does. Because if they don't, the exact scenario you're talking about will happen. Absolutely. which is why they shouldn't.
So what you're essentially implying here is that because people become unhappy, that the title to the property is illegitimate somehow.
No, I'm describing the reasons why socialist revolutions happen. Does this guy not know that socialist revolutions have happened? And does he not think there were reasons why that happened, rooted in the feelings of the workers? Maybe it's such a foreign concept.
I mean, he has a friend who simps for Adolf Hitler, so it's kind of weird that he doesn't understand how socialist revolutions happen when he has a friend who simps for a socialist.
For people like him, because anarcho-capitalist successes have been exclusively limited to the land of make-believe and, at best, I guess, Discord and Reddit, but actual successful political ideologies have achieved things, and indeed socialist revolutions have happened. And for the most part, this has been because when the state goes away, which is to say collapses, the existing material reality, due to the power imbalances and the property relations of capitalism, means that the working class are at that point occupying the majority of the economy, which puts them in a good position physically to be the ones to take control of it. But yes, if you're really
But they never do.
really stupid,
That's literally what Animal Farm is about.
like really stupid, you might hear me say all of that and think that the only point I'm making is property is illegitimate because some people are unhappy. By the way, please note that I'm saying this is why I support the state. In order to stop this from happening, I advocate for the state that I'm...
But the state didn't stop it from happening either. What do you think Weimar Republic was, right? Literally, the state has consistently been the number one factor in all of these revolutions you speak of. Literally every socialist revolution happened because of the state, not in spite of it.
saying prevents these types of socialist revolutions. So the obvious reading would be that I don't think that these property relations are illegitimate.
This guy needs to understand the words Weimar failures lead to Nazi final solutions every single time. The reason why people engage in socialist revolutions is because of failures of their state. Their state pushes the idea that, oh, if you work hard, you'll be able to be somebody someday, and then doesn't actually have that, right? People don't mind capitalism, they mind cronyism, they mind, they mind corruption, they mind private equity. Nobody gives a flying fuck about capitalism. It's just fine. Everyone likes it. The only real issue with capitalism, which you have made this point, is that it doesn't last. But it's not because of some power imbalances shit leading to a revolution. It doesn't last because eventually there will inevitably be a state, because all a state is at the end of the day, is an organized crime unit, right? You pay money for protection, right? In the form of taxes, and if you don't pay that money for protection in the form of taxes, you get arrested and thrown in a slammer, right? Or killed, even in some countries, right? Now, what did that sound like to you? That sounds like a mafia to me. And, the government will occasionally hand you out little favors, but when they hand you out those favors, they want a favor back. What does that sound like to you? Oh, right, the mafia. Right, literally all the government is just a more organized version of a mafia. They are a crime syndicate. In fact, this is why Japan is still a high trust society. It's because Japan is run by the Yakuza, a literal crime syndicate.
Or else why would I support a state to defend them? Now, maybe I'm being unfair to Lib. I mean, after all, if he's going to play a clip of me saying something and then respond to it, it's going to require him to have a memory of more than 5 seconds in order to actually have recognized the points that I've made and respond to them appropriately. And I guess therefore we can't blame him for completely inventing the idea that I support a mass socialist uprising by the working class that resorts to mob rule. But then on top of this, he also just doesn't understand some really basic ideas in economics.
Yeah, have you noticed how it's like this entire video is just him being an obnoxious twat, too? I've noticed that. Like, his video is like, well, why isn't he responding to what I said? Because what you said is retarded, dude. Like, have you not noticed that? What you said is mentally retarded. I don't have to respond to mental retardation. And neither does based if true.
Like, for example, the idea of
And I don't have to explain why what you're saying is mentally retarded either. I just have to say you're mentally retarded and move on.
Plus labor value.
And I like your bit at the end there where you cry about surplus labor, which is just directly from the labor theory of value, another one of Marx's great creations. Like, just say you're a communist and let's move on.
So, for the record, I didn't cry about surplus labor value. I just understand what it is and accurately described it. Surplus labor value isn't a communist idea, it's literally just the observation that workers bring more value into a company than they take out of it.
But they don't.
Through their wages. That is just obviously
It's not.
true. Are you seriously going to tell me that people working in sweatshops for a few dollars a day for designer clothing brands are contributing exactly as much to the revenue of that company as the wages they're receiving would suggest? I mean,
That's not what surplus labor would mean. Surplus labor would mean that they are creating more value, you know, as in like their job itself is value that's created, right? So the position that's created by the company is value in itself, right? So you are forgetting that bit. You're also talking about slave labor, right? Which only exists in socialist countries, funny enough. Right? It's funny how every single country where this is still happening is a socialist one, right? You don't see this happening in Argentina anymore. You don't see this happening in America anymore. But you do see it happening in China. I wonder why.
Aside from anything else, if wage labor doesn't
Like
involve...
you see it happening in Cambodia. I wonder why. You see it happening in Somalia to a lesser extent. I wonder why. Right? It's almost as if socialism is the reason why that happens. And of course, capitalism allows people to be greedy, right? That's not something people will never say that's not true. It does allow them to be greedy. But if the world is capitalist, it forces them to be a little less greedy because now they no longer have the ability to use the state as a weapon against the working class. Right? And so to appease the working class, they have to treat the working class like human beings. Right? And so they do. So what'll happen is they'll adapt social safety nets, they'll adapt all of these other things naturally, but they'll do it more so out of, hey, this will actually benefit our society. Because that's the thing, right? That's why I'm not against social safety nets. I'm against like flock cameras, right? I'm against needing my ID to log into a website. I'm against shit like that, right? Authoritarian overreach. I'm against, having to have all these little checks and balances at the airport that are unnecessary just because a 13 retarded suicide bombers decided to retarded suicide bomb a couple towers of ours.
of some surplus value being extracted out by the capitalist owning class, they'd sort of just be really bad at their
Notice
job.
how you said capitalist owning class and not capitalist system, right? The owners are not capitalists. The capitalist is a system. In fact, many of the owners in modern day capitalism are socialists themselves, right? Owning property does not make you a capitalist. It just means you're engaging with capitalism. Capitalism is the idea that you buy it, you own it. Right? That's what capitalism is. It's the trade of capital.
Right? Like, imagine literally being the person who owns the factory and you're losing money because you're paying.
And this is also the other thing. All of these retards who talk against capitalism focus on shit like factories, right? They always focus on fucking factories. Your country doesn't even have fucking factories anymore, dumbass. You got rid of them, okay? So like, shut the fuck up about factories. They're outdated and you don't use them anymore. So why the fuck are you bringing them up? Like, you'll never work a factory job. This is a fucking retarded ass, like, talking point. Shut the fuck up about factories. You don't even know what they are. Okay? Now, on a more serious note, what about owning the groceries you buy? You know, also capitalism, by the way. Owning your car, owning your fucking socks, your clothes, right? Capitalism, the trade of capital, the trade of private property, the trade of owning your house, your apartment, right? This is capitalism. Like, what you're saying about the workers is a small part of it. You're critiquing this specific part because you want a W so bad, and you know you can't get it if you just say, we shouldn't be able to own the corn we buy. This is why you sound retarded, because you're not attacking capitalism. You're attacking a single aspect of it that you don't like because you're too retarded to actually address what capitalism actually is.
The workers more than they actually bring in revenue. Now, maybe Lib just thinks there wouldn't be any
like, this is the difference between you, right? Based if true is attacking every aspect of communism. You're attacking one aspect of capitalism, and that's why he's winning.
Plus labor value extraction in anarcho-capitalism. I don't know what his argument for that could possibly be. I mean, in a way, I kind of agree, because I'm like, well, anarcho-capitalism would collapse pretty quickly. You're not going to get much surplus labor value being extracted then. But the thing is, I'm not criticizing anarcho-capitalism in the portion of the video he's responding to. I'm just defining what private property is. And therefore, Lib,
You're not defining what private property is. You're defining what a job is. Private property isn't a factory. It's anything you own that with your money. Like, what the fuck?
in order to be making this argument, would have to be claiming that there is no system where workers are not paid exactly a 100% one-to-one reflection of their contribution to the revenue of a company.
Because the revenue of the company is also not reflective of, you know, like this is the thing, right? He's anti-profit, right? But if there's no profits, there's no incentive to keep going, so the company just shuts down, right? Because the company needs profit for one. Like, think about it this way, right? If the company never profits, then the workers can never save money either, right? And so if the workers can't save money because the business can't save money, then there's no rainy day funds, right? And so when shit hits the fan, nobody is prepared because they all got exactly the money that they were putting into it. Because the thing is, money by itself has no real value. So when they take away the profit incentive, they have to actually pay their employees less, because what they're really doing is they're charging less too, right? Because ultimately they need to make a profit in some form to stay afloat as a business. Like, you actually need to make about 3 times the profit of what like your workers and all that cost in order to stay afloat as a business. You realize this, right? Like making anything less than 3 times what you put into it is going to bankrupt you very quickly.
Wow! But I suspect that Lib isn't actually saying this because he doesn't understand this is what he would...
Like this is the idea of a retard who has never run a business, right? Like, I've run multiple businesses, one of them which failed, but I've run multiple businesses, right? So I understand a little bit about how this works. I've also worked at businesses before, right? So I understand what the incentives are for all of that.
Need to be saying, because he doesn't understand what surplus labor value actually is. He just knows it's a Marxist...
It's a made-up gobbledygook talking point.
Concept, and he's so deeply intellectually incurious that he has no interest in studying the work of one of the most influential economists of all time. I suspect this because he says,
I'm tired of all this surplus labor of educating Mr. Critical here on basic economics and libertarian philosophy.
Now obviously this is a joke, but it suggests that Lib thinks that surplus labor is just excessive labor or labor that you don't want to do, and that's not what it is at all. Ordinarily, I'd give someone the benefit of the doubt, but Lib hasn't shown any understanding of what surplus labor value actually is, nor much understanding.
No, what it is that we don't care because it's common gobbledygook. That's all we gotta say.
Understanding of economics in general. See, the thing is, Lib, when you act like anyone who has a basic understanding of Marx's economic theories must secretly be a communist Marxist, what you're suggesting is that everyone who isn't a communist Marxist has no understanding of Marx's ideas whatsoever, despite their need to constantly criticize him. Like I say, this occurred not...
No, what we're saying is anyone who uses them in a positive light is a Marxist. Because it's true.
When I was advocating for Marx, not when I was criticizing capitalism, but just when I was laying out the basic academic distinction between personal and private property. Your personal property would be things you own that you use. Private property are things that you own that you have no intention of using.
That's false. That's not what... There is no distinction there. Private property and personal property are the same fucking things. The clothes you have on your back are private property. Are you fucking retarded?
Rather, you just want other people to use them while you continue to own them. That's what private property is.
No, private property is you paid for it, you own it. That's private property. It's privately owned by you.
And working class people don't have that by definition.
Yes, they do. What do you think a fucking house is? Oh, working class people don't have houses. Oh wait, it's personal property. Like, you can just start a business in capitalism, you fucking retard. Why don't they do that? Oh, well, they don't want to. Well, okay, well, that's the point, right? Because it's risky. It's risky. It's scary. That's why they don't start a business. Because they're afraid. Because they know that starting a business has a lot of financial risks involved. And that is why all this surplus labor talk is commie gobbledygook. Because only a retard would fall for it.
Working class people don't own things that they then charge other people to use so that they can earn passive income. That's because the definition of a working class person is someone who...
Mind you, this guy is currently having his women and children get anally raped by Muslims And if he ever criticized them for doing that, he'd go to prison. Just so we're clear. That's the state he has in his own country.
Sells their labor.
So he's attacking American capitalists because he's too pussy to attack the real issues going on in his own fucking country.
So,
Okay, wow, so there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, you must prove that Marx's definition of property is legitimate at all. Simply saying you're...
I attack basic logic too, because he's a German socialist, right? Like, all socialists are bad. And people may be like, but he's not a socialist. He's advocating for Adolf Hitler. He's a socialist. Like, that's all I have to say, right? Like, if you're simping for a socialist, you're a socialist.
Agree with it is extremely lazy, and the fact you called it the academic definition for it, I know you said it somewhere in the video, but it tells...
But he's homeopathic. I don't fucking care if he hates gay people. He's still, like, you know, so did fucking Karl Marx. That doesn't mean jack or shit.
This is everything we need to know.
right, so let me start off by saying something important. There were better responses in the comment section. The most obvious one being that the line between personal property and private property is actually quite blurry, and any sort of class system that's based on this distinction is going to be very oversimplified. Variations of this basic counterargument were made in the comment section of my original video. Something I think that's really important to recognize is there are stupid ideas and then there are stupid people. This is something I've been sure to point out back when I was talking about trans ideology mostly. Trans ideology is stupid, but there are some people who do a pretty good job defending it, all things considered. And then there are some people who are just stupid. They are not capable of understanding basic logic or basic principles of argumentation, and when I encounter those people, I feel the need to point out this person isn't just sounding stupid because they're defending a stupid idea. They are pretty obviously themselves deeply stupid. This guy is stupid. He isn't just defending a stupid idea, he himself is stupid.
Okay, you've said stupid like 6 fucking times already. So here's how I would do this. He's a moron. He's a twat. He's a Subsomalian IQ. He's a 6'7" intellect. He's he's got a dog. He's got dog and cat eater intelligence, right? This guy's so fucking stupid. He thinks that that bananas and rice is a culture, right? Notice how I can insult him in many different ways, but you just say stupid over and over again. It's because you're stupid. Because smart people can say different words.
He's defending it with bad arguments, a complete inability to actually understand
it's called verbosity, by the way.
Arguments I'm making, and a deep intellectual incuriosity about the wider academic discourse that if he spent 5 seconds engaging with, he could actually contribute to his ability to understand things a little bit better and make better arguments. And I know this because I'm aware of the better arguments he could be making. Random people in the comment section were making better arguments than him. They're not good enough arguments to actually convince me, but they're at least...
I mean... You said that they're blurry, but they're not blurry. There's no line between them. It's a Venn diagram that's a single fucking circle. Private property is personal property. Your distinction between the two is because you apparently fap to the idea that someone can own something, they can trade capital, and it not be capitalism. Like, the entire point of communism is the moneyless society part, right? You can't have a moneyless society without which has capital. And if literally everyone would have to be naked and homeless for this to actually make any sense. This is why Karl Marx invented the idea of personal property as a crutch in his own defaced fucking philosophy because he understood that he was retarded. And that anyone who believed him must be insane.
Worth engaging with. Lib instead says this.
First of all, you must prove that Marx's definition of property is legitimate at all. Simply saying you agree with it is extremely lazy, and the fact that you called it the academic definition for it, I know you said it somewhere in the video, but it tells us everything we need to know.
What do you mean I need to prove it's legitimate? The personal private property distinction simply observes that there are some things people own for their own personal use, and
No. You have to actually acknowledge if it's a meaning. You have to actually prove that it's a meaningful definition. Why is it that personal property is, in your opinion, meaningfully distinct? And this is the thing. It's going to be in your opinion because there are no facts to back it up. So you're going to have to argue from an opinionated standpoint, which is the issue you have. You think that the facts actually align with you. They don't. And you'd know this if you weren't a fucking Subsomalian IQ.
there are some things that people own for the...
By the way, I need to state this again. There are women and children being raped in his country, and he's not talking about that. He's talking about this bullshit in America, which has no effect on him. He'd rather defend, through his silence, millions of Pakistani Muslims raping and murdering women and children in his country while they force him to be disarmed so he can't do anything against them, than just admit that he's wrong here.
Anticipated use
here is the thing, right? Ultimately, what's going to happen is in a few years, this will be him, right? Let me just see. Where? Oh yeah, that's right. I'm on YouTube. They took it. They obviously would have taken it down. But anyway, you know what? I'll use the Kathy Griffin one, even though that's not real. Yeah. Yeah. Here we go.
of others. That is what I...
Here we go. Here we go. This will be you. Right? A Pakistani will just do this to you. And no, that's not a threat. I'm saying this is what will happen if you keep focusing on the non-issues.
explained, and this guy...
Like some pissed off Muslim will find out where you live and just behead you because they can. Not because of any like wrongdoing you did, but because they could, right? And you're not speaking up against that, right? You're like, I'm serious. You're going to die if you don't fight against what's happening in your own country.
saying, you need to prove that's legitimate.
And no, I don't think all Muslims are like that. I know plenty of Muslims, including one I have a roommate with, that is fine, right? But like when it comes to the far right Muslims, yeah, a little different than the moderate Muslims, you know? Like I live with the, I want to say the Muhammad Ali Muslims, right? You know, he has his personal beliefs. We don't agree on everything, you know, but ultimately, you know, he has the right to disagree with, you know, and all that, right? But like, we're not talking about those guys. We're talking about the Osama bin Laden Muslims.
What do you mean I need to prove it's legitimate? I'm literally just describing obvious reality. If you want to argue that distinction doesn't exist, that people don't own things that they expect other people to use, the onus is very much on you to make that case. Although I don't know how you would...
No, it's not. They bought it, therefore they own it. That's literally what private property is.
possibly make that case, because you would literally need to be arguing that the CEO of Blackstone owns 10,000 properties that he rents out for other people to live in the exact same sense that he owns his own personal family home. There's no difference. Also, he says I can't just say I agree with it, but the context...
Yeah, and you want to know, like, how to fix that, right? It's funny. He brings up Blackstone. Blackstone is not a problem, right? Like, a lot of people think they are. They're not. Private equity, also, you described private equity, right? You didn't describe capitalism. You described private equity. Private equity exists in pretty much every civilization. Again, it exists in communism. So I don't know why you're hammering on that.
Is that I'm defining terms for my argument. And when I'm defining...
Like, you'd argue it's called public equity at that point, but, like, literally, the state owning the means of production is still not... You get what I mean? Like, it's still not the people who work there owning it.
Defining terms, actually just telling you what I would agree with as a definition.
Like this is ultimately the thing that actually matters, right? If you're going to talk about communism, right, all you got to do to debunk communism is use this thing called reality, right? Communism has been adapted, and it's failed every single time.
Is enough. Imagine if I wrote an essay on the state and I said, in this essay, I will be using Max Weber's definition of the state as an organization with a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. And then the professor just wrote, you need to justify the definition. You can't just say that's the definition you agree with. If that was how it actually worked, academic discourse would be incredibly long and pointless. Also, I like how he just scoffs at me pointing.
Yeah, it is incredibly long and pointless already. Welcome to academic discourse.
Out the definition I'm presenting is the academic.
Like you want to know what's has value, right? Let's actually go to MIT Open Courseware. Right. See, this is something with value. Right. We can just go to here. Right. Quantum physics. Single variable calculus, deep learning, microeconomics, right? We can do that, but instead I'm watching a King Critical video and learning nothing because it's just a bunch of morons arguing over politics.
One, as if that tells you everything you need to know. Yeah, I guess it tells you that I understand the basics of political theory. And to be fair, that is quite a useful thing to understand if you're wondering why it is that Lib seems so hopelessly out of his depth here. Now, obviously, academic depth...
He's out of his depth. Okay, so 175 likes, 4.4 views. Let's actually look at Base of Truth's video on this, right? So let's see, does he link it? Yep, okay. He links it, all right.
Lightweight again, and as Justin...
So 32, oh, okay. I don't know, sir. This is social media. You look like you're not very popular.
Definitions can be wrong. I've spent a lot of time on this YouTube channel arguing against the academic definitions for things and explaining with arguments why I think they're wrong. But that's the point. You can sort of see where I'm going here. I use arguments. I explain why it is those definitions don't make sense.
Right, and while you do that, I'm gonna learn some deep learning basics. You know, actually, I'll learn deep learning advanced stuff, actually. Training, anima, Laura. Right, I'll just do that later.
Sense, and I would never just disagree with the academic definition for no reason, just because I think the fact.
Actually, let me do this for a bit.
This animal that looks like a puppy is actually a fruit bat. They mainly eat nectar and fruits. Some farmed fruit bats are harmless and have pretty gentle personalities, which is why in certain countries, people keep them as pets. What many people don't know is that bats are actually relatives of horses. Their embryo cells develop in almost the same way. Fruit bats have heads that kind of look like puppies, and they've got a ring of reddish-brown fur around their necks. Some of them even have wings that stretch up to about 6.5 feet long, and when they fold them in, it gives off a bit of a Batman vibe. Their calls sound like this. And here's something even more interesting. In places like Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, fruit bats are actually considered a delicacy. Since fruit bats love eating fruits and nectar, locals believe that they absorb all the goodness of the plants they eat, so consuming them is supposed to be really beneficial for health. Now, you might be wondering, don't they poop on their heads since they hang? This animal that looks like a puppy.
Yes, I already learned more from that video than I learned from his entire channel. But anyway, let's actually go to another video. Speaking of that, bat noises, right? This actually is kind of cool too.
Close, it's not.
No, it's good.
Getting the broom. He's only 3 inches wide. Close, it's not.
No, it's good.
That's also very educational. Anyway, I've learned
This
enough.
animal that looks like a puppy is
Academic definitions for things and explaining with arguments why I think they're wrong. But that's the point. You can sort of see where I'm going here. I use arguments. I explain.
Oh, wait. Actually, let me learn some Blender, actually. Blender sculpting tutorial. Torso. Alright.
In there, tiny eyes makes the beast look real. Blender's sculpting has come a long way in the last couple of years. It's now really easy to create very detailed models like this in no time at all. This beast model took about an hour. This is partly down to new things like the VDM brushes, advancements in the multi-resolution modifier, and the remesh tool. So in this video, I'm going to break down the entire process. For those that need a really detailed course of this process from a beginner's perspective, you can grab my full course this weekend only for just $10, including a free pack of awesome VDM brushes. Link in the description. So I start all my sculpts the same way, and that's by blobbing out the shape. You're just trying to get the silhouette, and it doesn't matter what sort of primitives you use. You can use cubes or icospheres. You just blob them all out to get the outline shape. Then once you've got the basic outline, you join them together. So select them all and press Ctrl J, and then you have to remesh. That joins them all together properly without any overlap. Then you can just start going in and sculpting a bit more. It's a good idea to keep it on a nice low resolution. It works faster, it's easier to move the mesh around, and remember, we're still getting the basic shape. Anytime you're changing the shape drastically, you might want to use the Dyn Topo method, or you just pull out an area and then make sure you remesh it afterwards. That stops any big stretching of the mesh. If you have any objects, such as a tongue that can be easily separated, then make it a separate object and sculpt it separately. It's much easier and can be better for performance if you want to hide shapes. I could have probably done that with the horns, in fact, and that would have helped. If you are modeling a beast like this, then try and experiment and pull the shape about into weird places and see what you can come up with. The next stage is to remesh it to a relatively low poly count. Try not to lose too much detail, so find a poly count or remesh count that works without losing too much detail, but you lower the poly count enough. Then add your multi-resolution modifier and subdivide to add detail. The multi-resolution modifier allows you to go to very high poly counts, and that's where you can start using things like the VDM brushes, which I'll talk about in a moment. Before you do that, you still want to work on the shape, making sure the basic form is how you want it. You can see that I've added some eyes in there. Tiny eyes makes the beast look really big. My main go-to brushes are the grab brush and the crease brush. The crease brush allows you to get nice sharp edges when you use what I call the reverse crease, which is basically holding down control while
see, we're just learning.
you use the brush. And you can see me doing that on the horns here. And you can see me using that brush all over the place to add that sort of second level of detail and kind of muscular structure. Now I want to start sculpting the tongue, so I lower the resolution of the dragon's head so it doesn't cause performance issues when I'm sculpting the tongue. And
This is why all these political channels are retarded, right? I could learn so many things just by looking it up, or I could, watch politics all day.
vice versa. Once we have that shape all looking good, we can start thinking about the brushes and the fine detail. I start off with basic alpha brushes,
The only reason you don't learn shit is because you don't want to.
which are just black and white textures, to give the model some sort of skin texture. I included some alphas in the pack that comes with the course.
But when it comes to politics, learning it is literally of no use to me, right? I know basic civics, so I know how my own country works, and that's good enough.
On top of this, I use the VDM brushes. Now these are special brushes that have a bit more detail in them, and they're great for things like horns, scales, teeth, strange growths, or whatever you can imagine. And you set them up with an anchored stroke type, and when you do that, you can sort of pull things out and let the magic happen. There is a kind of limit to this. It's kind of down to your resolution you're using, but generally if something is sticking out of your mesh a long way, then you want to sculpt that manually, and small little things like the teeth or smaller horns, then you can use the VDM brushes. If you do purchase the course and the pack, they're all kind of set up and ready to go with all the correct settings. You can make your own VDM brushes as well. It's quite straightforward, and there's videos on the internet on that subject. I'll try and remember to put a link in the description for those. In terms of how much detail you want to add to your shape, I would say you want a good coverage of the entire model, but obviously you'll want to vary the different types of brushes throughout, and you need a mixture of big elements and small elements. So in some areas I've made these kind of scaly things quite big, and other areas I've made them fairly small. And it's a good idea to have lots of references of different creatures like snakes and reptiles, so you can get an idea of where those details should go. I've left some details in about how I rendered the final image in case you're interested in the node setup that I was using. You should be able to pause the video where you need to. I use a basic 3-point lighting system, and the main node that I'm using is the pointiness node that helps to increase the shadows in all the cavities and some of the highlights as well. Now this style of modeling with the multi-resolution modifier can be really useful, and it's used often in things like films or detailed animations, but not so much in games of course, because of the high poly count you can't render very quickly. But if rendering isn't so important, you can still set up things like a rig and textures with the low poly mesh. And that's how
Alright, so you learned how to sculpt a dragon.
Now, obviously, academic definitions can be wrong. I've spent a lot of time on this YouTube channel arguing against the academic definitions for things and explaining with arguments why I think they're wrong. But that's the point. You can sort of see where I'm going here. I use arguments. I explain why it is those definitions don't make sense. And I would
Okay, but what have you taught anyone that's useful?
never just disagree with the academic definition for no reason, just because I think the fact it's the academic definition makes it intrinsically wrong. If anything, it's usually the opposite. Usually, academic definitions are the best definitions to be using. That's why I think it's worth specifically making a case of pointing out when they're not the best arguments. But that's the point. The onus is on me to point that out. If Lib has an argument for why the personal private property distinction in academic political philosophy is not legitimate, he'd be welcome to make it. But he has to actually make that argument. And the fact that he...
No, he doesn't actually. That's the thing nobody understands. You can just do things.
had this opportunity to do so, and he just deflected, I think that tells you everything you need to know. Anyway, did I mention that Lib is...
Actually, I think this tells me everything I need to know.
stupid, because I might have understated it a bit. Listen to this.
Why even have money at all? Because whatever you think they deserve, the state could theoretically just infinitely tax their citizens so that only the most positive moral obligations are fulfilled. Wait, this sounds a lot like a certain political philosophy that you're denying being a part of.
Okay, I think we have to bring that quote up just so we can look at it. This is what it looks like when Lib uses 100% of his brain. Why even have money at all? Because whatever you think they deserve, the state could theoretically just infinitely tax their citizens so that only the most positive moral obligations are fulfilled. Wait, this sounds a lot like a certain political philosophy that you're denying being a part of. Now, for context, this is his response to me saying that the state should pay the salary of healthcare workers. So if you add in that context, the quote would read more like, if healthcare workers are paid by the state, why even have money at all? Because whatever you think healthcare workers deserve, the state could theoretically just infinitely tax their citizens so that only the most positive moral obligations are fulfilled. Wait, that sounds a lot like a certain political philosophy that you're denying being part of. So the question there that Lib would like me to answer is, if healthcare workers are paid by the state...
Well, here's my question, right? If healthcare workers are paid by the state, and most healthcare workers are Indian, does that mean that the state is no longer British, but actually Indian?
State. Why bother having money at all?
Like, this is why this conversation is just a bunch of mentally retarded people arguing over gobbledygook. You're not addressing the problems in your own country that are tearing it limb from limb, ever. Like, let me look at his entire channel. I don't think he ever addresses the Pakistani rape gangs on his channel, ever. Like, trans ideology, okay, whatever. Furries, okay. Trans. Subjects in school that aren't taught. Voting. Responding to that. This. That. Hey, so, nothing about the Pakistani rape gangs. So millions of people are being raped and killed, including women and children. By the way, children, see that? That's a child, right? So, and children, are being killed and raped by Pakistani gangs, right? In the thousands, with thousands of members of the gang, right? Now, I shouldn't have to tell you why only a moron would focus on King Critical instead of... sorry, not King... Based of True, instead of... and trans stuff, instead of literally the actual worst thing happening in your country. Right? The only reason he's not focusing on it, again, is because it's a virtue signal, right? He's doing this to virtue signal to the Pakistani Muslims to on the idea that they won't rape his kid and his wife, right? But that's not actually what's going to happen, right? Anyone who actually knows what's happening understands that, no, they're there to kill you, right? Don't ever negotiate with terrorists.
Cool. Nope, I'm sorry, I just genuinely cannot begin to work out what point he possibly thinks he's making here, and I don't think, if you asked him, he would be able to tell you. Because he seems to be saying that we could get rid of money in this scenario, which, by the way, it's worth noting, this scenario is the scenario that most of the developed world already lives in, where healthcare workers are paid by the state, because the state could theoretically infinitely tax their citizens. Tax what exactly? There's no money anymore, right? I'm not quite understanding how the state taxing everyone infinitely would negate the need for money. I'm certainly not understanding.
Oh, here's how, right? If the state can do that with healthcare workers, they can do that with anyone. And so they can just give you what you need. And you no longer have to work. You no longer have to do it. You just have to work for it, right? It's literally the Star Trek world, which is literally the Communist Manifesto.
Understanding how taxing just enough to pay the wages of healthcare workers would negate the need for money. But if anything, taxing everyone infinitely would require infinite money, right? Which is pretty much as far as you could possibly get from zero money. There's also the question of why would paying healthcare
No, it's actually not, because infinite money would be worthless, and therefore it would be worth the same as zero money.
workers mean we didn't need money anymore? Surely.
Also, by the way, a lot of Europe is going away from the systems that they had because America is no longer paying for your healthcare. Because, believe it or not, yeah, we were paying for you guys. Yeah, we stopped doing that. So good luck in a couple years when you can't afford to pay for your own bills anymore.
You would need the money to pay them, pay their salaries, right? I'm actually quite impressed by Lib's ability to not realize that you would need money to tax people and then give that tax money to other people. And what does any of this have to do with fulfilling the most positive moral obligations? So,
well, the most positive moral obligation, right, would be to get rid of the Pakistani rape gangs, right, in your own country, who are raping and killing children and women and children in your own country, right? Especially as a father who has a children and a wife, right? So you have a woman and a children. I'm just saying.
Just for the benefit of other very special people in the audience who might be on the same intellectual level.
I mean, I think you're very special considering that you have not once brought up the Pakistani rape gangs going on in your own country that are literally making it so that women and children are being raped and killed en masse while you have a woman and a children in your house.
As based. I will now explain why it is that we need money. Money is something that we can use to exchange for goods and services. When you tax some of the money that I could be using to purchase goods and services and use it to instead give money to healthcare workers who are doing something really beneficial for the public good so that they can then afford to buy goods and services with their money, it's actually quite useful having money in that situation.
Okay, all right, I'm sure we can all agree that it's not a big deal to chip in, give him a little bit of our food in return for him saving our lives at the reactor plant.
I guess.
We'll make some shirts for him and his team that say, I work at the nuclear power plant, please give me some of your food. So if you see somebody wearing a shirt that says that, be a nice guy.
Who's gonna make the shirts?
I will be a shirt inspector, and I'll go around and I'll make sure everybody's shirts are legit. Is that okay? So will you make me a shirt that says shirt inspector, please?
That guy sounds like a cop!
No, I'm not a cop. I'm just an inspector.
He's a cop! Let's get him!
And obviously the cherry on the cherry bakewell here is that he's implying at the end clearly that this scenario that he's just made up in his head sounds suspiciously like communism. Now, he's almost said something correct here, but I'm thoroughly convinced only accidentally so. Communism, indeed, in its final form, would involve the absence of money. But the reason I suspect he didn't know this is because communism in its final form would also involve the absence of the state, and indeed, the absence of taxation. Because, fun fact, you need money in order to have taxation. And
that is true.
It is for this reason that no communist advocates for immediately abolishing the state and money, or indeed most of them don't even advocate for doing that within their lifetime. Like I say, Marxists tend to think in generations, in centuries. We're miles away even within the most optimistic Marxist.
Yeah, no, I understand. China has been spending billions of dollars to invade our country since the 80s. Yeah, I understand this.
Mind from the end state of communism. But obviously, I'm not really going to take the time to explain Marxist.
Oh, wait, did I say billions? I meant trillions.
And broader communist theory here, because at this point, that would be like explaining quantum mechanics to a 3-year-old. But suffice it to say that his little...
quantum mechanics. Okay, so you have everything is actually made out of an energy wave, right? And so instead, like, you know, what a particle is just a wave of energy basically having a soft and a hard barrier against it. The soft barrier attracts the object to it, and then the hard barrier prevents them from going any further. the reason we can't actually associate where a particle is in, for example, in the for electrons is in the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, is because they don't actually have a particle, right? This is proven by wave-particle duality, which is really just there aren't particles, right? So all particles are made out of waves of energy that attract each other and push back on each other at certain distances, right? And that is all energy actually is. It's just a bunch of wave functions, effectively. And so, we can even simplify this further into saying that it's like a ball, right, that attracts another ball around it, right? It's like a magnet ball. Magnets spin, right? You can, like, this is how you explain gravity to a 3-year-old, by the way. You're just explaining gravity to a 3-year-old, right? So, like, the idea of it being a physical particle is not really true, but it functions as that at certain distances where they literally cannot collide, because of how strong the wave functions are, right? And so it kind of has the idea of, hey, it's sort of like how the moon doesn't collide with the Earth. It's technically not physically, right? You know what I mean? It's technically not physically interacting with the Earth, but it's still not going any closer to the Earth, right? Because of gravity. And it's kind of what's happening with all these particles, right? They're just not particles, they're just waves. That's quantum mechanics, right? So you just describe gravity, but small. I know it's weird that I've simplified quantum mechanics that much. And a lot of people who are in quantum mechanics who preach quantum bullshit will be mad at me for that, but that is literally what you're doing. You're just gravity, but smaller. There, I've solved quantum mechanics for everyone.
Comment here is completely irrelevant to anything I've said or indeed believe. It has nothing really to do with communism, and in fact, it barely qualifies as a coherent thought. Let's just listen to it again. I mean, I really like the...
Like, literally, like, this is a good way to explain it, right? Earth... Like, we'll say Earth is the quarks and shit, right? Earth and moon, right? So, like, this moon will never collide with the Earth. It'll always go around this certain, like, distance from the Earth, right? And so it's almost as if there's a force that keeps them from colliding without actually physically colliding. And so that's quantum mechanics. Yeah. They aren't physically... There's no physical space that's there. It's just pure energy waves. But you can kind of use physical matter, because realistically, physical matter is an illusion created by our eyeballs, to describe it. Yeah.
The way that you can hear...
By the way, what I mean by physical matter is an illusion created by our eyeballs is very simple. It's the same reason why I can touch this box for a Ryzen R9 9950X3D, right? I'm not actually touching this, right? It's technically, there's a force in between my fingers, right, that is attracting this box to my hand, right? That's called gravity and electromagnetism, right? And when I raise my hand, which uses gravity and a fulcrum, right, a lever, right, to work like that, right? I raise my hand, and it follows it, right? But I'm not touching it. Technically, there is space in between my fingers and this box, right? Again, you can just describe You can just describe quantum mechanics as that. Obviously you won't be able to describe all the chemistry and stuff, but then again, chemistry is you'd also have to describe chemistry before that, so that's why it's probably not good to describe it to a 3-year-old. But you can kind of describe all of this to a 3-year-old, right? They can understand planets at 3, right? Oh, the world you live on is big, right? It's like this, but bigger, right? And so they understand this, but bigger. So they can understand this, but smaller, right? And so that's all you got to do, right? All it is gravity, but small. Just like all relativity is gravity, but big. That's all it is.
In his intonation, that his mouth is just moving.
Like we're not explaining all of it, obviously, but we're explaining the basics of it.
Without any feedback from his brain whatsoever.
Why even have money at all? Because whatever...
Like yes, 99%. Another thing, to be fair, with quantum mechanics is, again, I did say quantum bullshit. That's another issue with quantum mechanics. The vast majority of quantum mechanics is what I call quantum bullshit. Right? It's not real science or anything. It's just bullshit.
You think they deserve, the state could theoretically just infinitely tax their citizens so that only the most positive moral obligations are fulfilled. Wait, this sounds a lot like a certain political philosophy that you're denying being a part of.
Anyway, so now having conclusively demonstrated that Lib is not just misguided or misinformed, but actively unintelligent, I will now take a look at some of his arguments.
Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to scare the fuck out of King Critical, right? Alright. Look at all that, right? See all that flavor? I know. Rice, chicken, curry sauce, tomatoes, butter, and a little bit of pineapple juice. So good.
That actually approach being arguments. I mean, they're still really stupid, but not failing to even be coherent. Starting with this statement he gives in response to a statement from me, which I'll now restate for the record. One example of how a planned economy is more efficient than a free market one is that in a free market, money has to be spent on advertising to convince people to actually buy the service in the first place, as opposed to when that service is nationalized and much more of that money can then be spent on just providing the service, because people don't need to be convinced to buy it. And this is how Lib responds.
Yeah, this guy just knows nothing about economics, so I'm about to go on a rant here. Please bear along. If you watch the full video, he makes the claim...
By the way, the easiest way to debunk this is Chinese food and cigarettes. Chinese food and cigarettes have had ad after ad after ad after ad against them. They're still massive industries. The only reason why cigarettes are failing is because vapes are replacing them. Yeah, that's the only reason why cigarettes are failing as an industry. Then again, there's no ads for them. Weird, huh?
That private healthcare companies are bad and inefficient because he has to watch advertising. and that the creation of advertising is inefficient because you have to pay people to get your message out there when the state already does it. And not only that, but it's bad that health insurance companies actually have to prove that their services are good in order to still operate. So, critical. Advertising actually does provide value, because how else would you know that a product or service exists if you didn't know it existed beforehand? In fact, it actually creates jobs for the economy because you actually need people to create advertising. And if the advertising is bad or not efficient, this actually signals to the company that they need to change their strategy or reduce their budget in some way.
Okay, so yeah, I warned you it wouldn't get much better. Here he makes two claims. One, that advertising actually does provide value because otherwise I wouldn't know the service exists. And two, it creates jobs because people are employed to make the adverts. So the first claim is just ridiculous. I mean, how many adverts do you see on a daily basis for goods and services that you didn't know existed beforehand? More to the point, I'm talking
Plenty, actually.
here specifically about healthcare and other kind of essential services like that, which I believe should be nationalized rather than controlled exclusively by the market. And of course, I don't need adverts to tell me those things exist. Case in point, this isn't theoretical here. We don't have healthcare adverts in the UK, and I still know to go to the doctor when I'm feeling sick. And as for the idea that it's efficient because it creates jobs, the point of the healthcare industry isn't to be hiring marketing people. That's like if I said that the National Health Service having an English to Latin translator.
Why not? Like, I don't understand this. Why not?
That shows up for every single doctor's appointment is a giant waste of money, and you said, no, actually, it's very efficient because it helps to provide jobs for people who studied Latin. If the job isn't necessary and it isn't directly relevant to providing the service, and the person who is seeking out the service and purchasing it is having to ultimately pay that person's salary who has that job represents an inefficiency. And then...
Okay, and... Like, this is the thing, right? You're calling it inefficient, but you're behind us in tech, right? You're behind us in every industry. So, like, what's inefficient about it?
On top of this, Lib says this.
So the state actually does...
And by the way, your nation is currently being invaded by the third world, and they're bringing in Pakistani rape gangs who rape and murder women and children, and you have a women and a children in your house. So I'd be more afraid of that.
Spend around $2 billion.
Well, yeah, like the UK tech industry is abysmal. It's because of people like King Critical.
Dollars annually on advertisement or propaganda or whatever, which is just...
Like, you think academics matter and not actual, real, physical value, and that's the issue.
More money out of our pocket for things that provide no value to the economy.
Like actually, I do believe that eventually capitalism will be replaced by real communism. Similar to Star Trek, right? I actually do believe that eventually we will evolve past capitalism. But it's not going to be because of people like King Critical. It's going to be because of people like Elon Musk, right? Like eventually you evolved past the need for a normal job, right? You just do. And then in that case, jobs are just performed to appease the needs of, like, the hobbies of someone, right? This will eventually be a thing. Communism will be real, and it'll be the actual, like, Marxist definition. I absolutely do agree with that, eventually. But it will be brought about by capitalists, which is the total most ironic thing about it. It will not be brought about by anyone else.
Okay, so you'll notice here that he has an unabashed double standard. A company advertising something to you, that's great because, people get to be employed to make the adverts. The state doing the same, that provides no value to the economy, even though just as many people would need to be employed. Also, the whole it tells people about things they might not have otherwise known about applies here as well, probably even more so. For example, technically speaking, the NHS does produce promotional stuff, but it will be things like, hey, here are signs that you might have cancer. You know, like actually useful information that you might not have known. So both of the potential benefits he pointed out of private companies having adverts apply at least equally just as much to the state. But he insists that actually no, when the state has advertisements, that's bad. Also, I know that every little helps, but presumably he's talking about the US government here. Total spending from the US government in 2025 was $7.01 trillion. So you see a little 0.01 that looks like it might as well be a rounding error? That's $10 billion. $2 billion would be 1/5 of that. Show me a private company that wastes that little of their budget on convincing people to buy the product. I'd love to see that. Anyway, so maybe it was sort of poisoning the world to start off with his most stupid takes, but I just wanted to make it really clear that this guy has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to basic logic. And as such, I don't need to put too much effort into debunking the more speculative claims, where it would admittedly be harder to just show what he's saying blatantly is internally inconsistent or goes against obvious observable reality on Earth right now, because he's pretty much just making stuff up. Like, for example, here regarding private security firms.
And you're also making the claim that only the state can provide protection for property, which is also insane because we see private security be used all the time around the world and in America.
Okay, so use your whole brain here. Do you think there might be a difference between running a private security company when you have the backbone of a state-run comprehensive criminal justice system and running a private security firm where there is no overarching organization with huge amounts of institutional power to deal with much bigger threats? If you think about this for a few seconds, you might actually realize that when you're arguing against someone who believes,
well, this is why a military is required, yes,
that the state has an important function in facilitating capitalism, pointing out how well private capitalist companies operate under the state is not actually doing anything to debunk my position. Indeed, it's bolstering it.
And the best part is the ones that don't do it well will inevitably fail and be replaced by better ones.
Don't worry, everyone, when the private security company fails and Bolsheviks murder your entire family, they'll get a really bad Yelp review and eventually they'll go out of business. Also, I didn't know how else to respond to this, but
name a single Republican in Congress right now who you consider to be a libertarian, please.
Note that you can't help but to add to my words in order to make my argument sound different than what it was. I never specifically said Republican politician, I said Republicans, which I would think to most people would mean someone who votes Republican. And I can definitely name you people who vote Republican and identify as libertarian. My brother-in-law votes Republican and identifies as libertarian. Now, I get
you're British, though.
This guy will say, oh, well, they're not really libertarians. And okay, fine, yeah, whatever. I don't care. In fact,
Isn't this guy British? When did he convert to America?
Actually find it quite funny that this guy got the faintest...
Can we deport him, then? Yo, Donald Trump, can you deport this asshole?
...suggestion that I was...
Send ICE to send him to Somalia, where retards like him belong.
Suggesting libertarians have had some sort of success outside of Reddit and Discord, and it's like, whoa, hold on a minute, buddy, what's your slander? Don't you dare suggest we've ever had a libertarian in a position of government, actually in a position to change something. I'm sorry, okay, yeah, you can have this one. You're completely impotent. So far, you've definitely noticed Base's most enduring issue. He keeps misunderstanding the points I'm making, even when I've very plainly stated them. He'll literally play a clip of me making a point and then respond to the exact opposite thing. With this said, it probably won't surprise you to hear that the title of his video is accusing me of being something that I'm not.
A guy who's basically a communist, but for whatever reason, he doesn't realize it.
So yeah, this is a guy who completely misunderstands my arguments, fails to follow basic logic, and then concludes that the reason why
he understands your arguments, he just thinks your arguments are retarded.
Why my actual opinions and the things I'll actually say don't line up with what he's just made up about me must be because secretly I'm actually a communist. The claims Marxists make about the world are correct, I just don't agree with their conclusions.
Yeah, this is the biggest lie ever because every conclusion you've come to in your own political philosophy tends ever so closer to communism, and I don't...
Anyway, now let's look at something else that's useful to learn. Let's see here. You know what? Yeah, AccuFace.
The folks at Relution have recently released AccuFace 2, and AccuFace is Relution's AI-powered facial motion capture system for iClone. This simply allows you to use your webcam or pre-recorded video to automatically drive facial performances on 3D characters. And version 2 now leverages the GPU to handle computer vision and tracking workloads, delivering ultra-low latency, full-frame facial tracking while minimizing CPU workload, and the result is way smoother than previous generation. And AccuFace 2 produces even more smoother viewport experience, highly responsive real-time performance with an exceptional stability. This tool has been built and specifically optimized for Character Creator 5 high-definition characters. With GPU acceleration support, AccuFace 2 now drives characters with high precision for that realistic feel. And for those who like to follow up on this, or possibly you'd like to read up on it, then you can simply go over to the link in the description that'll bring you right here.
Oh, here's another one. So these are little things you can do. Metahumans. Yeah, okay. I'm just farting around at this point. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Minimax. This is a good... Yep, so anyway, I'm done with this video. See ya.